Hi, I'm Donna Jordan from Jordan Fabrics. Today I'm going to show you how to make a wall hanging called Diamond Cluster. And I'm going to get my daughter Monica to help me pick out some fabrics that will look really pretty in this. So we're going down to the retail store and we'll make our selections. Here's one of the options I'm considering. We have this beautiful collection from Lilac Ridge. Oh, this would really be nice, Monica. We could use that print.
Absolutely.
And a green and a lavender. So that's one option. We could also use some of these almost solid. These are a tone-on-tone group of prints. So we could, do something like they have on the pattern. We could pick out a dark and a green and a background. But let's look around and see what else we can find. Okay, what else looks good? We've got this whole section of Ginny Breyer kind of deep prints here. These would be really nice. We could pick a couple dark ones, or, I love that print.
Yeah, that's very nice with the aqua and purple.
Three,
That's it.
three.
Two darks and a light.
Yeah, like two different
prints and a light.
Yeah.
So like
Something much lighter green or turquoise.
okay.
Maybe that, something like that. That's an option, although you can kind of see elephants in it, can't you?
Yes.
But they would work.
Purple, blue, and then
Blue, purple.
yeah. That's so pretty.
That's so pretty. But we need something like that almost.
Yeah. That'd be nice.
So what are you thinking here?
So I'm thinking these two will be my lights,
Okay,
and then this darker purple will be my background.
I think it's going to look really good.
You think these go together?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and it's more muted the way this is. The one in this picture, of course, has way more contrast, but you get a really good star print there. I think it's going to look beautiful.
Awesome. Me too.
All right. We've each picked out a combination, so now we're going to take them down to the studio and get started sewing. This pattern makes a 50 by 50 inch square wall hanging. And here's the fabric requirements. So we're going to need color 1, we're going to need 3/4 of a yard, color 2, 2 yards, light 1 1/4 yards. Now I've switched the fabrics up a little bit, so I wrote on the pattern here which goes where so that I don't get confused. Now if you'll come down here, I've already got the fabrics cut off of the bolt and they're all ironed up and ready for me to cut. I'm going to go ahead and get all the pieces cut here. Now this is a pattern that we buy from Cozy Quilt Designs, and this is not our pattern, so I can't give you all of the sizes, but their patterns are really easy to follow, and that's why we make so many of their quilts. So I'm going to follow the pattern exactly, get everything cut, and then we can start sewing. All of the pieces are cut, and we need to mark the back of all of the squares right along the diagonal. And we are going to use a pencil. We're going to mark all of these, and then we're going to be stitching along here, and I'll show you what we're going to do. There's a lot of good chalk pencils and different marking tools, but we are going to be putting these squares onto the rectangles. We're going to stitch just about a hair away from that line towards the corner. We're going to stitch on there. Then we're going to be folding these over, ironing it, and trimming away the excess. So they're all going to go on different colors, but we're going to have to mark the back of all of the squares. I've got the first part of the patchwork laid out here. So we are going to line up the corners here, and we're going to stitch along the line, but a hair towards the corner right there. And we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to stitch on this line, but just a hair towards the corner. So I'm just going to move that out of the way for a minute and sew here first. So I'm just putting my needle just to the right of the line, almost on the line. So what we're going to do is we're going to iron this right like that. And the reason you stitch a little bit to that side is because the fold takes up just a little bit of bulk there, and it makes it hard to make these corners meet if you stitch right on the line. Now we'll turn it around and stitch this second one. I'm going to make another one exactly the same. The next thing we need to sew is one of these guys, and we have to sew it just like that. So I've put all the pieces with what goes together, and you have to be a little bit careful. I went through and wrote on the pattern everywhere, light print, purple print, green print, because my shading is not exactly the same as what they show in the picture, and it would be easy to get confused. So if you go ahead and write on the pattern, then you will be sure you won't make a mistake. We have a second one of these. And now we have, this guy has two pieces, so we're going to have to sew one on, iron it, trim off the extra before we can sew the second side on. So we'll sew the first side on, then we'll take it to the ironing board. And there's a second one of these, but it's the mirror image, so it's going to have the green on this side. So we'll stitch that on, then we'll get everything ironed and trimmed, and then we'll sew the second side on. So here's the first one that I stitched. So we are going to fold this right along the stitching line, and you'll see that the corners will meet, and then we will iron it. Same thing here. Open it up, make sure it's nice and flat. So I'm just going to iron all of these ones that I just stitched. Then we're going to go to the cutting board and trim off those back two layers. Now we want to trim the back two layers so we don't have all that extra bulk. So I'm just going to open it back up and put my 1/4 inch line right on the stitching line and trim off the excess. And I'm going to save these guys because we're going to have a fair amount of them, and we will stitch those up later and make something when we're all done with the wall hanging. Here's this one that we have to trim off before we can sew that guy on. So move it out of the way. I just pinned it so I'll know what goes where. So I'm going to trim this off. Then it will be ready for me to stitch along here. Now we can stitch this second square on here. Just get everything lined up, and we're going to be stitching right on top of this extra here, and I'll show you what it looks like. So when this gets ironed and trimmed, this is exactly now a 1/4 inch up from the edge. So when we sew this into the patchwork later, we will have a nice point on there. Now we're ready to start putting some of these pieces together. So these two go together, and that's going to get sewn to that, and that's going to get sewn to that. So I think I'll do this seam first. Line everything up carefully. This is pretty easy to sew. The pieces are big. There's not a lot of matching, and what matching there is pretty easy. we're going to press this seam allowance down, and at this point you can just finger press along here. You really only need to do it right on the edges. We'll put that aside and we'll sew these two together. Now this one, if you've been sewing carefully, that middle intersection will line up. So I don't know if you can see from that angle, but if you peel this back right where these guys meet, that should be a 1/4 inch in. So I'm going to stitch down there and we'll see how close we get. So here's what I'm hoping. That'll make one long line when it's ironed open, and it's pretty good. All right, so this seam allowance is going to go to the left. The pattern tells you which way to press all your seam allowances, and it really does help if you follow that. Now this is going to get stitched to here. So again, we will hope that our intersection lines up in the middle there. Since the pieces are so big, it's pretty easy to get them lined up. Everything is matching really, really well. So what we're hoping is that when this gets stitched, that intersection will be right along that line there. So let's see how close we get. This seam allowance is also going to go that way. Oh yeah, lined up almost perfect there. No pins, I just did the hope and sew method, and it's working really well. Now that's one part of the block. Now we've got to do another part. So here we've got these two and then that plain block. Now we'll press these seam allowances to the right. And then we'll stitch this block on. And then we will put these two sections together, and that will be 1/4 of the wall hanging. We're just going to make 4 blocks that are exactly the same and then turn them, and that'll be the whole wall hanging. So again, we will press to the right, and this goes right on top of this. So we are going to have to match that and that, but it's pretty easy because the seam allowances are laying in opposite directions. So these seam allowances are going that way, and on the bottom they're going the other way. So it's real easy to line everything up even without pinning. Now we'll iron this up, and we just have to make 4 of these, and that will be that's all we need to make the wall hanging. We're just going to take 4 of these and turn them and turn them and turn them. This will be the center, and then we just put the borders on, and we'll be done in no time. I'm ready to put the borders on. Instead of just plain borders, this pattern calls for a few half square triangles in the corners. So we are going to put this dark border all the way around. Then we're going to make some half square triangles out of these guys. They're going to go in the corners. And then this is going to go wherever the half square triangles aren't. This is going to go in the middle there. Then the top will be done, and I can't wait to get it quilted up. We've got our wall hanging finished here. Really a fun and fast project. I'm so happy with these borders. They're just a couple of half square triangles on the border. It really makes it look good. These are traditional prints. These are a group Lilac Ridge from Moda, and it's very bold. The pattern's very bold with the floral in the corners. We used 3/4, 1 1/4 yards, and 2 yards, and a 1/2 yard for the binding, and it came out 50 inches. So it's a nice big wall hanging size. Now let's see what Monica's looks like.
So I used the same pattern, but my fabrics are just a little bit different. This collection, this blue and purple, is called Pastiche, from In the Beginning Fabrics, and then I also used a Robert Kaufman fabric that has metallic gold accents, which I think is really pretty. I didn't have time to put on the border yet, not quite as fast as my mom, but we're getting there. Haven't quilted it yet, but this was really fun to put together, and I'm excited to add the border with those half square triangles.
Now, if you're wondering what we did with all those extra half square triangles, and I'm going to save these guys because we're going to have a fair amount of them, and we will stitch those up later and make something when we're all done with the wall hanging. The scraps from when we were making this project, Monica put hers together in a little runner. It's a chevron runner. These are all just half square triangles that we got as a byproduct from making the quilt. I took my half square triangles and I made a little teeny quilt here, and it's all pinwheels. Really fun, really fast. These extra projects that we made, they were just made with the scraps that we got while we were making the wall hanging. They're not separate yardage. So the amounts I gave you, the yardage amounts on the pattern here, that's all you need to make both projects. You can either make this one or this one with your scraps. Now, if you want to know exactly how to make these, let us know in the comments below, and we'll make another video tutorial showing you exactly how to make these extra fun projects.
Thanks for watching our video today. We hope you enjoyed learning how to make the diamond cluster wall hanging.
Happy quilting!